England's housing crisis isn't a headline, it's a daily emergency. Families with jobs are priced out, renters face rises, and social homes are vanishing just when they're needed most. From London to Leeds, bidding wars, cramped flats, and waiting lists stretch lives while wages lag. In this video, we expose the 10 forces pushing millions toward the brink: affordability gaps, stalled building, speculation, and more, and reveal who profits when homes become assets, not shelter. Stay to the end for fixes people can use now, and the truth politicians won't say. This isn't abstract, it's your rent, your future, your home. Number 10. Affordability gap. One of the most pressing aspects of England's housing crisis is the widening affordability gap, which leaves millions unable to buy or rent a home without extreme financial strain. Over the past decade, house prices and rents have increased far faster than wages, making it increasingly difficult for average households to keep up. According to the Office for National Statistics, the average house price in England is now more than 8 times the average annual salary, creating a situation where first-time buyers often need substantial parental support or face decades of debt. Renters are similarly affected, with many spending over 40% of their income on rent, leaving little for savings, education, or essential living expenses. The affordability gap is particularly severe in major cities such as London, Manchester, and Oxford, where housing demand is high and supply is limited. Several factors contribute to this affordability crisis: population growth, housing shortages, rising construction costs, and speculative investment all drive prices upward, while wages remain stagnant for many households. Research from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation shows that the gap between housing costs and household income is widening faster than in any other period in recent history, forcing families to make difficult choices. Young professionals, low-income families, and single parents are especially vulnerable, often unable to move closer to jobs, education, or essential services because housing costs are prohibitive. This gap also exacerbates social inequality, as wealthier individuals can access property and build equity, while others are locked out of the market entirely, reinforcing cycles of poverty and insecurity. For those impacted by the affordability gap, practical steps can help, though systemic solutions are essential. Exploring shared ownership schemes, government-backed first-time buyer programs, and regional relocation to lower-cost areas can make housing more accessible. Additionally, careful financial planning and early engagement with local housing initiatives may improve chances of securing a property. Imagine a young couple working full-time, yet still unable to save enough for a deposit, because rents consume the majority of their income. This illustrates the daily reality for thousands across England. The affordability gap highlights a structural challenge. Without increasing the supply of homes, controlling speculative investment, and supporting household incomes, millions will continue to struggle to access safe, stable, and affordable housing, deepening the housing crisis and shaping the future of communities across the nation. Number 9. Homelessness surge. A stark consequence of England's housing crisis is the surge in homelessness, which has reached alarming levels in recent years. According to Shelter, over 280,000 people were recorded as homeless in England in the last year, including those living in temporary accommodation, shelters, or on the streets. Homelessness is not just a lack of a roof over one's head, it has profound effects on mental health, physical well-being, and life opportunities. Families, single adults, and young people face insecurity daily, often moving between temporary arrangements or living in overcrowded conditions, unable to access stable housing. The rise in homelessness highlights the human cost of the housing shortage, showing that the crisis extends far beyond affordability. It directly impacts lives, safety, and dignity. Several factors contribute to the homelessness surge, often linked to broader housing market failures. Rising rents, declining social housing, and limited affordable options leave people with nowhere to live. Personal circumstances such as job loss, domestic violence, or health issues can push vulnerable individuals into homelessness when no safety net exists. Research from the Crisis Charity shows that homelessness is both a symptom and driver of housing instability. Once someone loses secure accommodation, it becomes exponentially harder to regain it. Temporary accommodations are often overcrowded, far from schools or workplaces, and unsuitable for long-term living, trapping people in cycles of insecurity and limiting opportunities for education, employment, and social engagement. For those facing or at risk of homelessness, several practical strategies can provide support, though systemic solutions are needed. Accessing local council housing services, emergency shelters, charities, and government assistance programs can offer immediate relief. Engaging with organizations that provide housing advice, financial support, and long-term planning is crucial to breaking the cycle. Imagine a family with children forced to move every few weeks, living in cramped conditions without stability. This is the reality for thousands across England. The surge in homelessness underscores the urgent need for affordable housing, social support, and policy reforms, showing that without action, millions of lives will continue to be affected by the devastating consequences of a system unable to meet the basic need for shelter. Number 8. Housing market speculation. One often overlooked factor driving England's housing crisis is housing market speculation, where investors purchase properties not to live in, but to profit from rising prices. This trend reduces the number of homes available for people who need to live in them, creating artificial scarcity. According to Savills research, a growing proportion of properties in major cities are owned by investors rather than owner-occupiers, especially in London and the southeast. This speculative behavior pushes property values higher, making it increasingly difficult for first-time buyers to enter the market. It also drives up rental costs, as landlords pass on the higher purchase prices to tenants, squeezing household budgets and limiting opportunities for families to save for the future. Several factors fuel housing speculation. Low interest rates, government incentives, and high demand create an environment where investors view property as a safe, profitable asset. Luxury developments and buy-to-let schemes often target wealthier buyers, leaving fewer affordable options for local residents. Research from the Institute for Fiscal Studies, IFS, shows that speculative investment contributes to regional inequalities, with some areas seeing rapid price growth while others stagnate. This behavior exacerbates the housing crisis, because even as new homes are built, a disproportionate share ends up in the hands of investors rather than people who intend to live in them. The result is a cycle where demand outpaces supply, affordability decreases, and ordinary families struggle to find stable housing. For residents affected by housing speculation, practical strategies are limited, but can still make a difference. Exploring shared ownership, co-living arrangements, or government-backed first-time buyer schemes can help people bypass the inflated market. Being aware of emerging neighborhoods or areas less targeted by investors can also provide more realistic opportunities for home ownership. Imagine trying to buy your first home, only to be consistently outbid by investors seeking quick profits. This is the daily reality for thousands of families. Housing market speculation highlights a systemic problem when homes are treated primarily as financial assets rather than essential living spaces. Affordability drops, availability decreases, and the housing crisis worsens, leaving millions struggling for stability in a market dominated by profit-driven investment. Number 7. Planning and bureaucratic delays. A significant obstacle worsening England's housing crisis is planning and bureaucratic delays, which slow the delivery of new homes and inflate costs. Even when developers have the funds and land to build, strict planning regulations, zoning restrictions, and lengthy approval processes can delay projects for years. According to the UK government's planning statistics, the average time to obtain planning permission for residential developments exceeds 12 months, with larger projects often taking even longer. These delays reduce the overall supply of housing, increasing competition for available properties and driving up both property prices and rent. For families and individuals waiting for new homes, these bureaucratic hurdles translate into prolonged uncertainty and financial pressure, making it harder to plan for the future. Several factors contribute to these delays. Local councils are required to balance the demand for housing with environmental protections, heritage conservation, and infrastructure capacity, which often leads to prolonged negotiations and revisions. Developers also face challenges such as community opposition, legal disputes, and complex land ownership issues, all of which further slow construction. Research from the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, RICS, shows that regions with slower planning approvals experience higher housing shortages, demonstrating the direct link between bureaucracy and the lack of accessible homes. These delays not only prevent new properties from reaching the market, but also create uncertainty for investors and homeowners, amplifying the overall housing crisis. For those affected, understanding the impact of planning delays is crucial. While individuals may not control national policies, staying informed about local development plans, upcoming housing projects, and council consultations can help anticipate changes in the housing market. Potential buyers or renters can explore emerging areas where planning is faster to access more affordable or available homes. Imagine waiting for years to secure a house simply because the approval process is slow, while rental prices continue to rise. This is the reality for countless residents. Planning and bureaucratic delays highlight a structural barrier in the housing system. Even when resources and demand exist, red tape prevents timely solutions, leaving millions of people in limbo and intensifying the housing crisis across England. Number 6. Decline in social housing. A major contributor to England's housing crisis is the steady decline in social housing, which has left millions of families without access to secure, affordable homes. Social housing, often managed by councils or housing associations, provides a safety net for low-income households, the elderly, and vulnerable populations. However, over the past few decades, the number of social homes has decreased significantly due to policies such as the Right to Buy scheme, which allowed tenants to purchase council homes at discounted prices. According to Shelter, the UK now has around 1.2 million fewer social homes than needed, leaving thousands of families on waiting lists and forcing many into temporary accommodations or overcrowded private rentals. This shortage has intensified financial strain and social inequality, creating a housing market that favours those who can afford high costs while leaving vulnerable groups behind. The decline in social housing is linked to multiple systemic challenges. Local councils often face budget constraints, limiting their ability to build new social homes, while developers tend to prioritise high-profit private properties over affordable options. Additionally, long waiting lists and stringent eligibility criteria make it difficult for families to access social housing, leaving many in precarious living situations. Research from the National Housing Federation shows that regions with the steepest reductions in social housing also experience higher rates of homelessness and housing insecurity, highlighting the direct impact of this decline on real lives. Without intervention, the gap between the need for affordable homes and availability will continue to widen, affecting generations of residents across England. For families affected by this decline, there are some strategies to mitigate its impact, although solutions often require patience. Engaging with local councils, housing associations, and government-backed schemes can provide potential pathways to secure accommodation. Shared ownership, cooperative housing, or regional relocation to areas with more available social homes are practical alternatives. Imagine being on a waiting list for years while juggling unstable private rentals or temporary housing. This is the reality for hundreds of thousands of households. The decline in social housing highlights a fundamental problem in the system. Without adequate affordable options, millions of people are left struggling, emphasizing the urgent need for policy reform, investment in new social housing, and innovative solutions to secure homes for. Number 5. Population growth pressure. England's housing crisis is also deeply affected by rapid population growth, which has placed immense pressure on an already strained housing market. Over the past decade, the country's population has increased significantly, particularly in urban areas, where job opportunities, education, and healthcare attract new residents. According to the Office for National Statistics, England's population is expected to continue rising steadily, adding hundreds of thousands of people who require housing every year. This growing population intensifies competition for homes, making it harder for families to find affordable and suitable accommodation. The pressure is particularly severe in cities like London, Manchester, and Birmingham, where demand far outstrips supply, leaving many people with no choice but to live in overcrowded or temporary housing. Several factors amplify the impact of population growth on the housing market. Increased immigration, longer life expectancy, and household formation trends all contribute to higher housing demand. While new homes are being built, the pace of construction often cannot match the speed at which the population grows, creating a structural imbalance in the market. Research by the Resolution Foundation highlights that regions experiencing the fastest population growth also have the highest levels of financial stress and housing insecurity, as more residents compete for the same limited housing stock. This competition not only drives up property prices and rent, but also forces many families to make difficult decisions, such as relocating far from work or schools, moving into smaller spaces, or remaining in temporary accommodation for extended periods. For individuals and families, adapting to population growth pressures requires flexibility and strategic planning. Exploring emerging neighborhoods, suburban developments, and co-living arrangements can provide access to more affordable housing options. Additionally, engaging with local councils and housing associations can help residents stay informed about new construction projects or priority housing schemes. Picture a family moving repeatedly because there are simply not enough homes to accommodate the growing population. This is the reality for thousands of people across England. Population growth pressure highlights that the housing crisis is not just about prices or rent. It is a fundamental challenge of keeping up with the increasing number of people who need a place to call home, affecting lives, communities, and future generations. Number 4. Shortage of new homes. A significant driver of England's housing crisis is the chronic shortage of new homes, which leaves millions struggling to find suitable accommodation. The population continues to grow, but housing development has failed to keep pace, creating a persistent imbalance between supply and demand. According to the National Housing Federation, England needs approximately 300,000 new homes in a year, yet construction consistently falls short of this target. This shortage affects not only first-time buyers, but also renters and families seeking more space, forcing them into overcrowded conditions, long commutes, or temporary housing. The lack of new homes also fuels skyrocketing property prices and rents, as competition intensifies for the limited available properties. Several factors contribute to the slow pace of home building, including planning restrictions, high construction costs, and limited availability of land. Local councils often struggle to balance environmental concerns with the urgent need for new housing, while developers prioritize high-profit luxury properties over affordable homes. Additionally, bureaucratic delays and complex approval processes slow down the delivery of new projects. Research from the UK government's Housing Delivery Report highlights that even when new homes are built, they are often concentrated in certain areas, leaving high-demand cities underserved. This uneven distribution reinforces regional disparities and limits access to safe, affordable housing for many families. The shortage of new homes is not just an economic problem, it affects social stability, community cohesion, and long-term quality of life. For those affected by the shortage, there are strategies to adapt, though solutions often require patience and planning. Considering emerging towns, new housing developments on the outskirts of cities, or government-backed housing programs can provide opportunities for better access to homes. Engaging with local councils or community housing initiatives can also help residents stay informed about upcoming projects. Imagine needing a home immediately, but having to wait years for construction to catch up with demand. This is the reality for thousands of households. The shortage of new homes underscores the urgency for policy change and sustainable development, highlighting that without significant action, England's housing crisis will continue to affect millions, shaping the future of families, communities, and the economy. Number 3. Rising rent costs. Another major factor fueling England's housing crisis is the soaring cost of rent, which affects millions of households nationwide. Renters are increasingly forced to spend a large portion of their income just to maintain a roof over their heads, leaving little for savings, education, or other essential expenses. According to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, rents have grown nearly 30% faster than wages over the past decade, creating a financial squeeze that disproportionately impacts young people, low-income families, and those living in high-demand urban areas. This rapid rise in rental prices is not just a number, it directly translates into stress, insecurity, and limited life choices for countless residents across England. Several underlying issues contribute to rising rents, including limited housing supply, investment properties, and regional price disparities. Many landlords focus on high-demand areas, raising rents to maximize returns, while new rental properties fail to keep pace with population growth. The imbalance between supply and demand is particularly visible in cities like London, Manchester, and Bristol, where affordable rental options are scarce. Research from Shelter shows that an increasing number of households spend more than 40% of their income on rent, a level widely recognized as unsustainable. This situation forces some families into overcrowded homes, temporary accommodations, or long commutes, impacting their quality of life and overall well-being. Practical steps can help renters navigate these challenges, though the systemic issue remains. Strategies such as negotiating rent, seeking housing benefits, or exploring shared accommodation can provide temporary relief. Additionally, moving to emerging neighborhoods or suburban areas where rent is more reasonable can ease the financial burden. Visualize paying nearly half of your monthly income just to live in a small apartment, leaving minimal resources for food, healthcare, or education. This is the reality for many. Rising rent costs are more than a financial problem. They are a barrier to stability, independence, and opportunity, shaping the daily lives of millions and reinforcing the urgency for policy reforms and housing solutions across England. Number 2. Lack of affordable housing. A critical issue intensifying England's housing crisis is the severe shortage of affordable homes. Millions of people struggle to find housing that fits their income, forcing many to compromise on location, size, or safety. According to Shelter, over 20,000 households are on social housing waiting lists, with many waiting for several years before securing a suitable home. This shortage is particularly acute in urban areas, where demand far exceeds supply, leaving low and middle-income families facing impossible choices. Affordable housing is not just about cost, it is about stability, security, and the ability to plan for the future. Yet these essentials are becoming increasingly inaccessible to ordinary residents across the country. Several factors contribute to this shortage, including the reduction of social housing, restrictive planning laws, and rising land prices. Since the 1980s, tens of thousands of council homes were sold through the Right to Buy scheme, but replacements were often insufficient, leaving communities without adequate support. Meanwhile, developers frequently focus on luxury housing because it offers higher profits, ignoring the needs of those who cannot afford such properties. Research by the National Housing Federation highlights that despite growing demand, only a fraction of homes built each year are truly affordable, further widening the gap between available homes and those who need them. This imbalance forces many families into temporary accommodations, overcrowded rentals, or shared housing, creating long-term instability. For people affected by this shortage, there are strategies that can help mitigate the impact. Engaging with local housing associations, applying for council housing, or exploring shared ownership options can offer practical pathways into more secure living arrangements. Understanding the market is also key. Looking at emerging neighborhoods with new developments can provide opportunities before prices rise further. Imagine being part of a family on a waiting list for years, moving multiple times, or spending a huge portion of income just to stay housed. This is the reality for hundreds of thousands. Affordable housing isn't a luxury, it is a basic human need, and the lack of it continues to place enormous pressure on families, communities, and the broader society. Number 1. Skyrocketing property prices. One of the most urgent factors driving England's housing crisis is the rapid rise in property prices over the past decade. While wages have increased only modestly, the cost of buying a home has surged at an unprecedented rate. According to the Office for National Statistics, average house prices have jumped by more than 50% in the last 10 years, whereas median wages have risen by just 20%. This growing gap between income and property value makes it increasingly difficult for first-time buyers and young families to enter the housing market. The imbalance has created a vicious cycle where demand far exceeds supply, and buyers are forced to compete for fewer affordable homes. This trend is not confined to London or major cities. Even smaller towns and suburbs are experiencing steep price increases, leaving millions struggling to keep up with escalating costs. The surge in property prices is fueled by several interconnected factors, including limited housing supply, investment speculation, and foreign investment. Buy-to-let investors, overseas buyers, and even property developers have contributed to driving prices higher, often prioritizing profit over community needs. The result is that ordinary residents are priced out of their own neighborhoods, leading to growing social inequality. Studies from Shelter and the Resolution Foundation indicate that regions with the highest property price growth also show increased financial stress, with families spending a larger portion of their income on mortgages or rent. This pressure impacts not only financial stability, but also mental well-being, as people face constant uncertainty about their housing situation. For those trying to navigate this unforgiving market, there are practical steps to consider. Government schemes like Help to Buy or shared ownership programs can provide a foothold for first-time buyers, making it possible to access homes otherwise out of reach. Renting strategically in emerging areas or considering smaller homes or suburbs can also ease the financial burden. Visualizing the impact, imagine earning the same salary as 10 years ago while trying to buy a house that costs half again as much. It paints a stark picture of the pressure millions face daily. Property prices aren't just numbers on a screen. They are real barriers shaping the lives and futures of countless families across England. England's housing crisis is not just a set of statistics. It's a reality affecting millions of families, young adults, and vulnerable communities every single day. From the decline in social housing to the pressures of market speculation, rising rents, and bureaucratic delays, each factor compounds the struggle to secure safe and affordable homes. The affordability gap leaves countless people unable to buy or rent without extreme financial strain, while the homelessness surge reminds us of the human toll behind the numbers. The housing shortage isn't just a problem for individuals, it impacts society, the economy, and the next generation, shaping where children grow up, where people work, and how communities thrive. Understanding the causes, from policy shortcomings to market dynamics, allows us to see solutions more clearly. While some strategies, like government programs or shared ownership, offer relief, the crisis demands broader attention, investment, and innovation. By highlighting these issues, we hope to raise awareness and inspire action, showing that housing is not just a commodity, it's a basic human necessity. Everyone deserves a place to call home, and tackling this crisis requires collective understanding, advocacy, and engagement at every level of society. Don't forget to check out our previous video for more eye-opening insights. If you appreciate the effort we put into making these videos, please support us by subscribing. It's just one click and helps us create more valuable content for you.